21% said their agencies hadn't started to plan.
You could change the federal retirement system. The Chief of Naval Operations says all the Navy's investigations into
The Office of Personnel Management wants to know what federal employees think of their benefits.
Welcome to the Federal Leaders Playbook, where high performers in the public sector can push their career forward by learning about the trends, innovation, and technology advancing agency performance. We're kicking off Season 1 by exploring the world of IT service management. We're talking about how federal IT organizations are evolving to manage budget cuts, security breaches, and ever-increasing service demands. Here we go.
Hi, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the current state of ITSM in the federal space. But before we get going, let's go around and introduce ourselves. My name is Tom Hamill. I'm technical lead for the BSM practice within Acuity.
I'm Eric Lazarson, Vice President at Acuity.
Carrie Postorero, Managing Director at Acuity.
I am Jessica Alfaro, Senior Manager at Acuity.
Okay, we also have a special guest with us today, Jeff Collison from BMC.
Hey folks, Jeff. I'm excited to be here talking about ITSM in the federal space. For the last 7-8 years, I've been covering Department of Defense and various other agencies out there.
We talk a lot about IT organizations supporting both technical services for other organizations as well as the business services. What are things in the service management space that are helping to keep up with the shadow IT? I can do it on my own. I do it at home faster. I'm able to get, spin up servers, spin down servers for application development.
Well, I think there's a big push these days to, whether it's a DoD agency or a civilian agency, to move towards a implementation of a configuration management database, because that's really, whether it's going to control shadow IT or not, whether I don't think, based upon the mission sets that are needed out there, everyone needs to really be agile out there.
Excellent. Yeah, I see it all the time. I hear it all the time. It takes too long. We sometimes in the operations world forget that our customers, they're exposed to the ease of procurement out in their personal life, and there needs to be this balance. Certainly needs to be secure. Security needs to be taken into consideration first, but I think as we start looking at service management, and we talked about kind of the comfort level with the basic ITIL process implementation at some of these agencies, getting into request fulfillment and tying some of those into some of these automation tools. There's a number of tools where you can request things. It can go through a standard set of either a standard change or through some standard approvals. The provisioning should be much quicker. You should have, those server builds, those application levels, all that should already be approved and authorized and secured and available for these different groups, because they are trying to meet mission critical requirements. So I just see service management today, feels as if it's a hindrance to some of these organizations because the process is not as mature as it could be. Socially, they're not quite ready for that within their organization. People are afraid to give up some of that control of, okay, if I can just have this automated, it reduces my workload or my team's workload. I still control what's being automated, but they're not quite there, and they're not thinking about that.
I think it's interesting that you make that point. I, as an engineer, know that I can quickly spin up something in AWS if I'm allowed to from my agency. On the flip side, without a CMDB, I can spin that thing quickly up. Where does my bill go at the end of the day? Which is a big problem.
The financial part of that's huge.
But also, from an IA perspective, how is that going to impact the mission? At the end of the day, I just need to have some type of record keeping or reporting that is automated on the back end to satisfy some of the other things that I, as an engineer, don't necessarily think about, such as the costing or from an IA perspective.
Right. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I think when you think about ITSM tools, it's largely been give me your data, put your data into this ITSM system and let me consume it. I think the ability to generate back out meaningful information is still kind of behind the curve. I can follow this process, I can put in all of these details, but what does that get me at the end of the day?
That's a great point. We have preached for years, put your information in one single source. Let's get it all in there. Let's, start to categorize it. Let's prioritize it. Let's do all these things to it. So transactionally, I can move through an ITIL process, at a pace that is approved by the organization. But it's how do I make decisions with that information, and what is pulled out? We have lots of information in there, and we start to hear new buzzwords around big data and all these other things, and there's tools around visualizing that information. My concern is the IT leaders see this this lake of information, and they're saying, "Wow, that's a lot of stuff. What do I do with it?"
Right.
And I don't think we're at a point in the federal space where those leaders know enough to make decisions with it. They're not always driven by the financial impact of a process taking a long time or a service, performance being degraded.
Right.
They're not always thinking about the financial aspect of that. And I know some of my personal experiences working in the financial space and banks and up in New York, and they're driven by application downtime costs X amount of dollars. And in the federal space, they don't always think that way. So it's interesting you mentioned reporting, because we're putting tons of information in there. Our tools are collecting it. We're putting it in there. We're relating it. We're building out these models.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're talking about kind of ties back to, so some of the challenges that we've had is just having that champion, someone that understands service management, that understands the footprint it has, that it's not just a service management tool. It's a lot of tools. It's the processes, it's, the output of the data. It's all of that, and enforcing a vision, coming up with a vision of this is the way that the organization needs to go, and communicating that. And I think that's where, a lot of the shortfalls that we've seen in the federal spaces, that communication doesn't make it down to the worker bees, the people that are doing the work, that are executing on these processes. They're not seeing where the output of what they do on a daily basis. What does that mean from the larger scheme of IT service management as a whole?
I would definitely agree with that on the champion statement from all of the agencies that I've actually visited across the board. But just having someone that can actually champion, not necessarily so much the tool set and technology in the beginning, but really kind of the process and who needs this, what type of data out of the system. So it's really a champion that can communicate across the agency from an enterprise perspective.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I'm going to throw a challenge out. Who can wrap this up, this discussion on the ITSM in the federal space?
I love a good challenge. I think my assessment of it at the beginning was probably right where I think this conversation kind of solidified the fact that we've made huge strides in kind of the ITSM evolution in the federal space. We've got a lot of experience sitting at this table, both in civilian DoD agencies, in the intel space. We've been there, we've seen it, we've helped. It's maturing, but it's maturing slowly.
But maturing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, the wrap up is what we just ended with the champion.
Find a champion.
Right. Looking above, not just staying at a use case. This is bigger than just that. It's looking, bringing your head up, many levels to see how it all fits together.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, thanks for joining us today on this
You're
discussion. If you're interested in today's discussion, we invite you to read our show notes and download additional free tools and resources at federalleadersplaybook.com. To learn more about Acuity or to contact any of us directly, visit Acuity's website at myacuity.com.
Thanks for listening to the Federal Leaders Playbook. Check out our next episode, subscribe, and visit federalleadersplaybook.com for more great content. See you next time.